We're gonna be pushing them in this way.
Hi, Zach. I'm Courtney from like I said, nice to meet you. I know Sam really well from Kiwanis.
Oh,
Nice
good.
to meet you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Samantha. I was also going to say that photo of you on the front of the bank.
Yes.
That was like the best
Yes.
photo. So I was like,
That might have been our biggest. I don't think we didn't publish that for a whole year. 2 years in the bathroom at Wilco. We were there.
yeah, you guys were there. Yeah. It was a great picture. Yes.
Good day.
Yeah.
With the
The sunglasses,
sunglasses.
yeah. Nice to meet you.
You too.
No. Love it. That's so smart. Like extra.
Where? I'm listening. That's in the back. I have to go look in the back. Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah. After the lunch.
Yeah.
Hey, Remy.
Hey, Sal.
Carson.
Good to see you.
Is it a?
There we go. We have a quorum now. We may have a counselor zooming in. Yeah. Is everybody that knows that needs to know that. Okay, and we have a quorum now and we're a few minutes past 6 o'clock. So I'm going to go ahead and call to order the June 27th, 2022 joint meeting of the McMinnville City Council and the McMinnville School District and Board of Directors. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. I know Carson is going to get us going. I've asked that we do a round of introductions throughout the room just to make sure that we all know each other. So thanks again for being here.
Thank you. Calling the McMinnville School District Board meeting of June 27th to order as well. Housekeeping things, the mics are live. We're broadcasting Zoom, but Zoom participants are not joining us. Exits are on those doors or these doors, and bathrooms are just about any hallway you can find one. It's yes, you have to have a pass before you can leave the bathroom. Yeah, thank you all for being here. We, Mayor Hill and I spoke of this meeting maybe a year and a half ago and said, hey, let's get together. And a year and a half later, we are finally here. So super excited with the brand new mayor. So we are glad to get together. The original idea of the meeting was sort of this Venn diagram of we have things that we're doing for kids and you guys have things you're doing for your constituents, which are sometimes kids, and they overlap. And the idea was, let's figure out where those overlaps are and see if there's ways we can improve some synergy. And so we did some brainstorming on what those are. And it's really amazing how many things that we're, as a school district, doing laser focused on kids that are affecting the same, the constituents of the city council. And there's a bunch of things the city is doing that is laser focused on their constituents that's overlapping our constituents as well. And I think the more we spent time talking about what those are, it became, you could talk all night on what some of those are. And we narrowed that scope down to tonight to just some basic ideas of this is things that we are sort of sharing. And I think the one that came to mind for me was property. The school has a lot of property throughout the district, and we as board members don't even know where it all is. But it would break my heart to have the city looking for some particular facility that we owned and that we didn't even know that the other had, and vice versa. We have a larger piece of property that would be ideal for schools, and we may need to keep them for schools, but also maybe that's something that could be used for the city for another purpose. And so tonight, we're going to first hear about some boundary maps from who's given the presentation on boundary maps?
Brian Crane.
From Mr. Crane. And then the city has a property list, and ideally we can just kind of brainstorm on how we could bring those two together. So Mr. Crane.
Can we do introductions?
Oh, I'm
first?
sorry. Yes.
Great. So before we start, right, if we could just go around the room and do introductions in your name, your role, why you're in the room, that would be wonderful. My name is Remy Drabkin. I'm interim mayor of the city of McMinnville.
Carson Benner, school board chair, proud parent of 2 McMinnville High School graduates, small business owner and advocate for kids.
Jeff Towery, city manager, also proud parent of 2 Mac High graduates.
Janice Breich, school board member, 23rd year.
Sal Peralta, city councilor,
parent of a Mac High senior. Paul Hadlin, school board, family practitioner.
Chris Chenoweth, City Councilor.
Gerardo Partida, school board for 4 years.
Abby Warmbier, I'm on school board and surprising to Zach, and proud parent of one McMinnville student and also married to an employee. And we chose to live in McMinnville because it's a great city to be in. We've been here for 5 years.
Good evening, Zach Geary, current McMinnville City Councilor in my fourth year. Proud parent of a kindergartner come this September, so I'll be going through the run with it and super excited to get this going. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Jason Bazan, McMinnville High grad, class of 1994. I have 2 high schoolers currently, well, incoming freshmen and a junior. Thank you.
Debbie Brockett, McMinnville superintendent, and been here almost 1 year, 3 days from today. It'll be 1 year mark.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brian Crane, Director of Facilities and Operations. And I asked, hopefully we can get this up on the screen for you.
I'm sorry to belabor this, but I'd just love to finish going around the room and get all the
Please.
staff in the room. I want to make sure everybody knows everybody. Thank you. Thank
Remy?
you.
And have a son who just graduated.
Remy, can you hear me?
Thank you.
Director of Curriculum Inspection. Proud parent. Mac High birthday is next year, so having you two in high school.
Fantastic. And Starla Pointer from the News Register is here today as well. Yeah. Perfect. And then this is our council president, Adam Garvin. And that's all the introductions. So Mr. Crane, sorry to hold things up with those for so long, but thank you.
All right, welcome everyone. This is a map that I asked Flow Analytics. They do a lot of our data. They presented a school board meeting and they do a lot of our data crunching for us. What I asked them to do was I asked them to outline in this purple color all properties that are owned by McMinnville School District 40. And then they highlighted in this shaded purple area that all the tax lots that are owned by the city of McMinnville. It's a pretty cool map and you can, just for reference, this is owned by nobody on the screen right now. But it allows us to see, as Carson was saying, kind of that synergy on how we can kind of look at the properties we own together. This is the high school. So this property right here, just for a reference point, kind of starting in the center, is all of the high school. This is Baker Field, the high school, and this is, you can see Wortman Stadium. It's really nice because you can zoom in pretty closely here and see all of the properties that we own. A lot of people don't know, but we do own some residential properties that are adjacent to Baker Field here, in the idea that in the future we could use them for students, or we could use them as educational classrooms, or if we needed to expand classrooms in the future, building more classrooms there. So you can get kind of you can take a 30,000 foot view, or you can zoom in and you can see these are the areas. And they've also got the city of Lafayette and Washer Elementary School. You can see that up there in the corner as well. So I just wanted to, Carson asked about properties and kind of looking at, I know the city of McMinnville, I believe, put together a map that's very similar. This one kind of shows, this one has names of schools. So it's kind of easier to reference for us to kind of look at. So I'm happy to entertain any questions or zoom in on any properties or areas that you would like me to kind of explore more. This is Patton Middle School right here, and this is Wortman Park. So you can see that this is, looking at this map, the place where McMinnville the city of McMinnville and McMinnville School District own properties that are very close to each other are Patton and Wortman Park. Those are the two that are closest to each other.
Brian, would you just quickly go through the expansion parcels that we have,
Yeah. So
the bigger pieces, I guess?
yeah. So right here at the high school is where we have the most properties, and you'll see, oops, there are some homes like I described over by the softball field. There are some tax lots here that we own. There's 5 homes over here that we currently own. And then we have, this is a parking lot, actually. They're listed as different tax lots. On the east end of the high school, this home right here that basically shares a driveway with Wortman Stadium. The driveway to get into Wortman Stadium is right in here, and the driveway into their garage is kind of here. So this property right here next to Wortman is also owned by McMinnville School District. And then the last residential property that we own, and then I'll get into the other future middle school, elementary school, and high school sites, is over by Memorial Elementary School. So the house that's right next door, this is Memorial Elementary School, and this house right here is owned by McMinnville School District. If we were to ever purchase this home here, then you could expand this section of Memorial if you needed more classroom space or other types of facilities. In terms of our future school sites, we have a future high school site right here, which is at Hill Road and Wallace, where they put that roundabout in at Hill Road and Wallace. That's the future high school site, proposed high school site. Just down the road on Hill Road and kind of that Cottonwood area, there is a future elementary school property that we own. And then a future middle school site, which is up here just north of Grand Haven. It currently, it had filberts on it and was being farmed. Those reached the end of their lifespan, and it's now going to be farmed for grass seed. But this, and there are multiple tax lots here, but this entire rectangle here is McMinnville School District and is a future middle school site. In case you're wondering, this little parcel right here with filberts, because people start to ask when they see other filberts that are nearby. This one is owned by Yamhill Soil Water Conservation District. And then this one is actually owned by Mac Water and Light. So the farmer was farming the filberts on all 3 of these properties. But I know Mac Water Light is removing the trees here, and same with Yamhill Soil Water Conservation District. Any other questions or any other areas you'd want me to take a look at?
And Mr. Crane, you were generous enough to take us around this spring and on our works or our retreat, and we looked at multiple properties. So if my math is right, I think we're about 125 or 130 acres fallow ground-ish.
I trust you.
It's about 70 at Hill. Is that right?
40 at Hill.
40 at Hill. Okay,
Yeah,
so be
40
less.
40 at Hill. There's about 27 at the Grand Haven, north of Grand Haven, and there's about 25. And you can actually, what I love about this map,
So be less than that.
yeah, is you can click on the tax lot and it'll give you some information about it. It doesn't, this one particular doesn't give you the acreage, but it does just give you a little bit more information about the tax lot. So, yeah. Yes, sir.
What triggers the development of the elementary schools or the high schools out on Hill Road or that middle school up 27th Street by Grand Haven? Is it a student count of surrounding schools or district wide, or?
That'd be in our enrollment, right?
Okay.
It's our enrollment and then our capacity to have students in current buildings. So if we max out every school building, then we need to looking at a building elementary school, middle school, or a high school.
And are we close to that on anything?
Actually, Flow Analytics, at a previous board meeting, the data, the statistic that I remember is our population in 2031 will be the same as it was in 2016. So our student population. So even though we got all this new construction happening around McMinnville, the number of students in our buildings is going to be the same in 2031 as it was in 2016.
To successfully split a high school, the magic number is upwards of 3,000, and Superintendent Brockett could probably answer that better. But when we looked at it, if you split, when you have fewer students, everybody just gets less services. And so there's a real desire to have smaller communities, but when you divide it in half, you end up with a lot less specialty programs like we have now. And so the long-term plan was to do another high school. And what we've seen is that population is just not getting there. Unless, and that's one of the things I think we have a shared goal. It would be great. We'd love to have another high school, but we need a lot more students, and our mortality or fertility rate is dropping quicker than our population is growing.
Excuse me, I just need to announce that Counselor Menke has joined us on Zoom for the record. What's the current use of the residential properties?
They're currently being rented. So they currently are occupied and are being rented.
And they're almost entirely single-family residential?
Yes, they're all single family residential homes. Yes.
And who manages the properties?
We have Sean Dunn with, I believe it's Windermere, that manages those properties.
And Councilor Gary, there's two options for the community center or the activity center?
Yeah, the current, and we had the honor of presenting to the Long Range Facilities Task Force and about the MacPac project. So just a quick primer on what Chair Benner is talking about, the new facility that we're looking at, that we brought many community members along for a 2-year process to look at ways in which we could co-mingling some uses and services that we have in our facilities, like the aquatic center and the community center, and need some space for that new facility. The recommendation from the community was to build a new facility at a new location, and the two locations that the committee recommended were over next to Albertsons, which is a much larger site than it would be needed, and that would be a discussion to be had with the property owner, Linfield University. I believe that site there is 80 acres in total. And the site we are needing is about 10 to 15, depending on how much expansion and parking and event space we want to include in that initial build out. And the other site is over by McMinnville Water and Light and Joe Dancer on the uphill slope along the Yamhill River there, up more, yeah, sort of by their facility there on the Riverside Drive, Marsh Lane, up. Yeah. Yep, across that. It looks like we already own. Oh, never mind. We're good. We got it. No. Yeah, it would be kind of where his mouse is where they were talking. So those are the two sites that were included in that recommendation for areas where we're looking. Those are a good direction, but we're open to any and all discussions depending on how those flesh out. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And
then, is this map something that's available for us after the meeting that we can have?
Yeah, absolutely. I can share the link. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're good. When you look at expansion around the high school area, you guys have those single family residential, but there is a pretty good sized commercial building that's been for sale for, I don't know, a year or two across the street from Bakerfield. That's currently a winery building. Is that, do you guys ever intend to expand that way, or is
that for sale?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was for sale.
And then you guys also own the old, what used to be your guys' shops before you bought Willamette Greystone.
Yes.
Is that something you guys intend to hold on to long term, or?
We're actually, the property on 19th Street, this property right here, we're actually looking at using it as an outdoor, right now, looking at it for short-term use as an outdoor learning lab for our fire emergency services pathway.
Oh, nice.
Our fire emergency services teacher, Mr. Bob Sutton, he is a Tualatin Fire Department member, but he also is a teacher. And so he is going to be full-time teaching next year. And we walked through this property with him, and he was really excited about the possibilities. We're hopefully going to purchase a fire truck that we can have kids so they can get access to a fire truck and use the equipment on that fire truck, park it at that facility, and then have an outdoor learning space where they can practice using their equipment. And then also possibly use some of the interior spaces as run-throughs for search and rescue, which Mr. Sutton was really excited about, because you can't find buildings that you can get into, that you can take the glass out of, make it safe for everybody, and then run people through it multiple times. You usually get a building that's going to be demolished that you can get access to for a week, and that's it, and then it's gone. So that's kind of right now the short-term idea of that. Long-term, that's just still a discussion of there's a lot of, to have kids in the buildings there, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to retrofit it for seismic, to retrofit it just to get it up to code. So there's a lot of money we would have to invest to get that up to code on that one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
What are the issues you face with your facilities and undeveloped properties?
What are the issues?
Yeah, where are there opportunities for partnership because there's something that's not working well?
We're going to be farming those future school sites. So we're farming 2 of the 3. The one that's closest, the Cottonwood, the future elementary school site, is a property that the farmer is not interested in farming because it is surrounded. This one is surrounded by residential on 3 sides. So I would say this property right now, we're just trying to keep it mowed and keep it level. And so this would have the greatest area of possibility in terms of work we could do there. And then if I'm not mistaken, this property just to the west of it, I think is owned by the See Later Foundation, if I'm not mistaken. So there could be a lot of partnership in, temporary use of that site right there. The property, the north of Grand Haven, is going to be farmed for seed, grass seed, as well as this property at the end of Wallace and Hill Road be farmed for seed. So I would see that would be the greatest potential for a kind of a synergy project. And I know that's just adjacent to I believe it's the J. Pearson Park that's here on the walkway, if I'm not mistaken. So there could be I think that has the most potential.
Yes, sir.
Thanks. And if this question is the answer is too long, we're happy to sidebar it. But, and I don't know if this is for you, Mr. Crane, or for the board, but as you guys look at, you see you have land holdings for each of the expansion of each of the offerings, elementary, middle, and high school. And I'm following along. I know there was discussions and the choice on the last bond was to invest in the existing infrastructure of the high school and the middle schools. What is the period of time you look at and forecast out to make those decisions at each of those levels? If that question makes sense, is it sort of every year? Do you decide next year if we need to build a new school? Is it every 5 years? Is it every 10 years? Or is it sort of, yeah?
I can take the first crack at that, but it's driven by the bond schedule. In one part, I think that if we were rapidly expanding, that would be a different dynamic. But in the current forecast, there's not rapid expansion. And so the bond schedule also kind of ties in with our maintenance schedule in that by the time the next bond is due, we need to do maintenance on these facilities. And so when we did the remodel of the high school, there's one wing that we didn't touch, and that would be if we don't need another high school by the time the next bond comes around, that would be getting attention and bringing that up to the same standards as the rest of the high school. But Superintendent Brock, did you?
No, that is correct. So we look out 3 to 5 years with bond plans. So it would be at that time, we'd have to have a discussion, look again at our flow analytics, make sure nothing changed with enrollment, and then start having those conversations.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions for Mr. Crane? Very good. Thank you, sir. Programming and space usage. Or did we got or shared facility usage? Are we finished with bullet 1?
Yes.
I was looking at the superintendent, make sure. Yeah, sorry.
I didn't know if we wanted to talk at all about the shared, we have the document in here for shared facility usage and how we share our properties already, or if that was just reference material that we are speaking of. So if you look facility usage, the very second to last page of your packets, there's a draft, kind of explains to everyone sitting here tonight how often we already share our facilities with city and the district. So we have a draft here of just looking in the future where we would be sharing our facilities. I don't know if there's any questions about that.
Counselor Gary?
Just on the subject of that, actually writing a list out of what each of those uses are, and just on that subject, I don't necessarily have a question or concern or comment about the existing share use agreement or what that is. My only hope in sort of taking this setup of joint meetings and moving that forward and is sort of modernizing it and codifying it and moving that forward, because I look at the list of our facilities that you guys use, and that MacPack is going to be pretty impactful to that. You know, if we go away from our existing community center, one of the pieces of that new facility is a concerted choice from the community, and where to put our resources is not as a performing arts center. It is a big one, and not. And while we have gym space, it'll be less set up like a performance hall that you could play basketball in. It's more of a basketball gym that can have a bunch of people in it. And so there's just a lot tied up, not in the past, but in the future for our facilities. And by this list, the facilities that the school district relies a lot on for their programming and offering and service delivery. And so to me, it's more of looking at in the future to how we're going to make sure we work together as a partner to, as we have those conversations and as that facility and program develops, that you guys are in those decisions with us along the way. So that's just my comment, looking at this form and how important that's going to be for you guys and us in the future to make sure we're sort of in lockstep on. And I know, Susan, you were the staff lead on the MacPack program. I don't know if I'm missing anything or there's anything in here of import on this share use agreement or shared facility. I know this is what you spend a bulk of your time on. And so just want to make sure if you have anything that you wanted to comment on that, if it's okay with the chairs.
Thank you, Counselor Geary. I'm Susan Muir, the Parks and Rec Director. I would just generally wanted to say we have a really good working relationship through these shared use agreements. And I know the Parks and Rec staff and the school district staff work on these calendars about this time of year to get everything ready. And generally, we have a really good working relationship in that regard. Like Counselor Geary said, and I think there's a link to the final MacPack report. And when we say MacPack, we mean both the group that developed the plan, the building sometimes is referred to as MacPack, and certainly the process and the report are referred to as MacPack. Anyway, there's a link in your packet that can take you to the final report that came from the community group, of which Ryan McIrvin was the school district representative on that. And it will show you what we have planned for the new building, the square footage, and we just look forward to working with you as partners as we go forward into new buildings as well.
Any questions while we have Susan at the mic?
Director Mayor, do the city tennis courts, is the high school still using those, or are they all pickleball courts now? Because that's been one of our.
Yeah, we all heard a lot about courts over the pandemic. So the ones at City Park, which is really Star Mill Park, those are city owned. The Cowles courts, I believe, are now school district owned, although they were city. So
right.
Those were the ones that we heard the most feedback about during the pandemic, along with the Linfield courts, which were no longer available to the public.
Okay, but behind the pool part or behind the pool courts, are they all pickleball or is there still tennis?
There's still tennis there. Yeah, we only converted a little more than half of them, I think. So there's still an opportunity to play tennis over there. The farthest west courts are still tennis.
Okay, thank you.
The pickleballers may be playing on them occasionally, but if someone comes to play tennis, they are able to move them aside.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Susan? Thank you. Programming and space usage, did we have a report on that?
I did not have a report. I think we were going to talk just about originally our summer programs that we offer. And Miss Ferreira, I always want to call her doctor. Soon enough, Courtney will be, but Courtney Ferreira can talk to you about our programming for summer, what we're doing with students and how we're working with the city on that.
Fantastic, thank you.
Good evening. I apologize. I don't have the numbers in front of me. However, we are planning a robust summer programming. So last year in summer funding is always a little ambiguous depending on what the state releases in the spring. And last year, as a response to COVID, we had quite a bit of funding. There was really a push from the state to do a robust rebound in lost learning or gaps that came due to the disruption from the pandemic. So this year, our funding is about half of what it was last year, which is still way better than what we would have had under normal pre-COVID situations. So while we have about half of the funding, we're planning on credit recovery that happens at high school, and that has started already because at high school, it's best to keep kids engaged as soon as they finish and get them caught up and kind of done so that they can move on to other things in their summer. Whereas the K-8 plan is to allow teachers and staff to take a bit of a break. And then we will offer a robust summer school offering, which will begin at the end of July and go into the first few weeks of August. And the funding, there's always rules with funding from the state. So the funding for high school is really geared towards credit recovery. And the funding for K-8 is academic, but also enrichment. And so there's a lot of different opportunities that we're offering at the mid-level. We're doing some CTE experiences for kids to come in more like kind of a camp environment where they're trying different pathways. And the elementary plan is a half-day program where we will feed them breakfast and lunch. They will go through a rotation of experiences that includes academics, but also enrichment as well. What questions do you have for me about that?
What are CTE experiences?
Good question. So I don't have the list on my brain exactly, but I can tell you the things that we've done in the past and the things that we were discussing. We have an amazing welding facility at the high school. And so we can bring students in for short amount, like a week-long camp where they can try out some of those things. Brian, do you remember some of the other? Brian was more involved in the mid-level one.
Can I just clarify CTE is career technical education? I don't know if that was part of the question.
Yes. So some of the other ones were, we had some art experiences. Do you remember what the other?
There's a lot of the welding, fabrication, the building of like dog houses and things in the construction.
Yep. And I think there was also, so at the mid-level, we have STEM and we have art. And then we also in the past have had some even culinary opportunities for kids, looking at the different pathways that are available at the high school. And then how can we entice kids to get interested in it at mid-level is really the goal with that. This might shock you, but for middle school students, coming back for just academics is not all that enticing. And so what we try to do is hook them with something that they're passionate about, and then dabble in a little bit of reading and math while they're here to kind of make it a robust experience for them. And the elementary program is, our first round was really targeting students who had had a disproportionate impact from the pandemic, where they might have experienced a lot more absences or some, a disruption in their learning that was beyond their control. And then as soon as we were able to kind of get as many of those families engaged in summer school and signed up, then we were able to open it up for others that are also looking for some summer enrichment opportunities.
And Mr. Crane, can you explain a little bit with our partnership with Evergreen and what we offer through Evergreen during the summer, and then anything that Campfire is also doing during the summer months?
Yeah, so the summer program Campfire used to be the STARS program, is now Campfire, and that's being run at Newbie Elementary School. So there's some childcare and some great activities. I was driving by today and saw a bunch of kids playing on the Newbie playground. So it was actually really nice to see them all playing out there. At Evergreen Space Museum, we do have some robotics classes, robotics clubs, excuse me, that meet out there and plan for their robotics competitions. We also, over the summer, we have 3rd and 4th, 5th and 6th, and 7th and 8th graders doing an aviation and a space camp, week-long aviation and a week-long space camp that we're using our summer school money to then fund that program there as well. So it was a huge success last year when we did it. And so we wanted to continue that program again this year for space and aviation to get kids super interested in those two fields.
I did think of two more opportunities that we have. So we have some special funds that are designed to support students in focal populations. And one of those is for special education. And that is, we always have extended school year for students who experience learning loss during breaks. But this is also, it exacerbates those dollars to really help support students who have had who participate in special education and have had an impact with the pandemic. And so our special ed team has been working very closely with those families and teachers to ensure that their individual education plan goals are met during the summertime. And then we also have Title III dollars, which are targeted for EL and migrant children. And those, I believe, is going to be a STEM camp that Christian Frack is planning with his department. So we've got a lot going on. This money is kind of you spend it during this time or you lose it. And so one of the things that we really try to do in August is pay very close attention to the budget. And at sometimes we might have a little bit more that we can do. And so it would not be uncommon for us to call Susan at the city and say, can we sign up some kids for additional swimming lessons? Are there other classes or things that are being offered in the city that we can then use this money to partner with to get the kids involved in enrichment, which is really important. We know that 60% of our students experience poverty at a below, and a lot of them are not able to participate in summer camps or go on vacations, or we have a lot of kids that haven't even been to the beach or to Portland. And so these opportunities that we can get them signed up for enrichment during the summer is really important to us.
Thank you. How many of our schools do you think will have children in them this summer?
All except for Patton and Grand Haven. So,
Fantastic.
And Patton, because of the work being done?
correct. Yes, Brian can speak to that for a long time.
Brian's digging a bunch of holes all the way around the building.
Yes, which is, so sometimes when we have work done, we prefer to do it during the summer, obviously, while students are not there. And it has been our experience in the past where we would consolidate summer programming. And we're really careful about that though, because a lot of families also experience transportation obstacles. And so when you move services away from their home school, we just see less kids enrolled. So it's always been a priority for us to keep services out at Washer, or especially the schools that are, in that downtown area. Newbie is always a big hub for us in the summertime because we have so many families that live within walking distance to that area.
Ms. Muir, would it be putting you on the spot to ask you to tell us what you've got going this summer? Thank you.
About summer fun. So we've identified some of the same problems that Courtney mentioned. And we've been working on the last few years to try and reduce barriers to participation in our program. And so we launched a program. Jeff Towery challenged us to make a free and fun summer, the first summer that the pandemic was around. What we learned through that is similar to what Courtney mentioned. We need to go to the communities. So we actually, through ARPA dollars, have a van coming that can be a mobile rec station. Right now, we are currently going around the city to different apartment complexes, parks. We will go about anywhere where we can figure out how to run a program there. Our program is really a partnership with Parks and Rec and the library for the city. And then we reach out to our other partners like the school district, Chemeketa, Evergreen. We work with Head Start. We work with a lot of different groups in terms of this partnership. So if you look at, and I'll give you a bit.ly in a minute, but there is a schedule for summer fun. We have over 150 free programs for families in McMinnville over the next 2 months, including reading programs, concerts, movies, preschool play dates. We have a lot of activities going on. The kickoff was last Saturday. The first concert is tomorrow night, if anybody wants to join us at City Park, and it goes through the end of August. So we're very excited about that. We do think that this is bringing more and different people into our programs and not just allowing us to be a fee-supported program. We do know it takes resources. We do not have access to the same federal dollars for our programming. We do apply for grants. We're waiting to hear right now if we got a $40,000 grant for summer fun this year. But we are working hard to bring our Parks and Rec programs out to the community where they are and meet them where they are for free.
Fantastic. Thank you.
I'm not about programming, but I just wanted to follow up. You mentioned that 60% of the students are experiencing poverty. Do you know how many don't have permanent housing or access to permanent housing?
That's a really great question, and it's always a data point that's very difficult for us to capture. We participate in community eligibility provision, which means that we're currently able to offer free breakfast and lunch to our entire school district, which is an incredible program. However, it creates, it takes away the need for us to capture the free and reduced information from our families. And so we have what we've called in the past homeless liaisons, who have a caseload of students who are in the depths of poverty, kind of like our top of the triangle tiered need. But I would tell you that we have an incredible amount of families that are keeping themselves beyond, out of that place by being very resourceful in, couch surfing and doubling up with family and kind of being creative in how they're solving that problem. So my gut as a former building principal is that number is significantly larger than anything that we've ever been able to capture as a community. And that the best way to capture that information is through empathy phone calls, where you're kind of not asking a family to like blindly fill out a government paperwork, but where you're kind of leaning in and asking those questions and understanding the obstacles that they have.
Thank you.
Any other programming questions?
Yeah, I have one, or actually I have a couple. Brian mentioned the fire pathway. Is that a new pathway for you guys, or is it one that's been around for a while?
It's one that's been around for a while. It's pretty established and very popular. We have we have the we're considering the the law enforcement pathway, but that's not what they call it. Criminal justice. Thank you. So the criminal justice pathway and the fire pathway are all kind of under the first responder. And so that's been really popular. We also have, gosh, there's a whole list, Debbie, there's like 12 or 14. You can look it up and help me out here. It's we've got the health pathway, we've got education, we've got fabrication, culinary. Oh yeah, I should remember that one.
Horticulture.
Horticulture, thank you. Yeah, this is a good game.
Construction.
Yes.
Education is kind of important.
Yes, I think I mentioned, yeah.
Oh, you did say it. Did I miss that one when I was listening to the others?
When they finish or graduate and they took that pathway, do they leave with any certifications, or do they have, what's their leg up on other students applying to like the Shemeketa program or
Yeah,
Lynn Benton?
absolutely. So our goal with our CTE programs is to have them career ready or to really meet that standard of what the industry standard might be. And so our students would take a certain number of classes to be endorsed in a pathway. But there it really is an amazing opportunity. So for example, in the culinary arts pathway, if we have a student who's incredibly passionate about that, they don't just take their 2 classes and are done. They can continue to take the classes for all 4 years and kind of go deeper with their passion and understanding about that. The same is true with all of them. There really is an opportunity for kids to try a lot of things or to really decide I want to go deep with 1 or 2. So it's pretty exciting. And we're always kind of looking at where the next area of need is for the community. You know, a few of us participate on partnerships with Shemeketa and the McMinnville Association and kind of understand, for example, we were just having a conversation about CDL licenses and how we have an opportunity for people in our region to get their CDL license. Well, if you go upstream, one obstacle is for students to actually get their regular license. And for any of you who have had 16-year-olds recently, that's a really challenging process to get into the Shemeketa class. And so we're currently exploring how we might work together to solve that problem, whether we can partner with them to offer it either as a course at our high school or as an after-school program, or you know, kind of, especially with being attuned to our families that experience poverty, how can we release some of those obstacles?
Thank you. You mentioned Campfire is doing some summer programming at Newbie. Are they doing any programming anywhere else in the district?
No, in the past, and Susan can speak to this more, but in the past, we have had the STARS program that has only been at one location. So prior to having Campfire, we had Kids on the Block. That would be during a school year. And then during the summer, STARS would kind of pick up that need for a certain amount of families. So we're kind of continuing that model as we switch to Campfire. And Newbie is again, a great location for that because there's the opportunity for them to have walking field trips to the park or the pool or the library. And it's a nice central location as well.
Definitely. And you mentioned Kids on the Block and Campfire during the school year. As far as we're entering year 2 of that initial 3-year contract, and where do you see it going past that 3-year mark with Campfire? Is there runway there? Will you start back over with the fresh RFP?
Yeah, you know, it's been an odd year with COVID. I think, you know, last year in the summer, we were all thinking that we were going to start a completely normal school year. And then that quickly shifted last year in August. And so we're looking forward to kind of the expansion of Campfire into all of our buildings and to kind of get back to a normal after school routine with our families. We had a lot of just disruptions this year. And so I think it will be good to look into that.
As for continuing, we're going to have a really strong conversation with Campfire because the cost of Campfire is preventing many of our most needy families from accessing the after school care they need. So when you ask if we're going to extend, we would love to, as long as it is available to all students and not just to those that can afford the high cost of after school care. So we like what Campfire does, but our whole purpose, and I did a lot of studying about Kids on the Block. That's where I spent most of my summer last year, was talking to people about Kids on the Block. One of the best parts about Kids on the Block is it was affordable to families that needed it most. And we're not finding that Campfire has met those needs at the level we need it to meet the needs of all students. So that'll be a conversation moving forward. And where we do move with Campfire will depend if we can get the cost of Campfire to a level that all families can afford.
And is there any state or federal grant programs or dollars out there for that type of after school curriculum?
We do have an it's called the 21st Century Grant, and it's an after-school program. So it encompasses not just after-school childcare, but also after-school enrichment and academic support and clubs and things like that. So we currently have that grant, and we do use it for that purpose, at our different buildings for academic intervention and kind of extending.
And last time we met with Campfire, they did indicate that they are applying for grants so they can offer more scholarships for students in need. So we're hoping that continues to expand as part of Campfire's work as they continue to reach out for the federal dollars to help with that. But that's going to be our biggest obstacle moving forward with Campfire, is making sure it's available to all students and all schools at a price that they can afford.
And not just the economic offset, but just general demand in general. Where's the temperature in the room from the district standpoint? Is Campfire able to capture the demand that's there? Or from what I'm hearing from constituents, is there still quite a bit more demand than there is service level?
Yeah, so Adam, I would say that childcare is a big concern for everyone in our community. During the pandemic, I sat on a group, I think Susan was there as well. We were trying to solve that problem. It's a really complex problem to solve because a lot of in-home childcare might have this capacity, but the childcare provider is only comfortable with this amount, especially during a pandemic. And so I know that our families are getting very creative with how they're solving their childcare issues, whether it's extended family or neighbors or, partnering with other families to solve their problems. I think, to Debbie's point, a lot of our families that couldn't afford, many hundreds of dollars per month for Campfire really did come up with a different solution and kind of just said, okay, this isn't for me. So if we are able to be creative and come up with a different solution that makes that more accessible to them, I think we need to come up with also a way to market it and possibly, listen to their obstacles and help them come up with ways to solve that issue.
And Campfire did start out slow this year, but it was due to lack of staffing. So just like all of us, trying to find employees can be difficult. And they were having a very difficult time staffing every school. So they started out small, staffing 1-2 schools. And then as they got more staffing, they expanded. So Mr. Crane follows us closest. We are in now. How many schools is Campfire in at the end of the year? 5. Yes, just make sure I was correct. So we're in 5 of 6, but we still have to work out a partnership out in Lafayette for Washer in order to get it in our 6th school. But Campfire did expand. But again, by the time it expanded, parents, I believe, had already started to find other care. And again, we just have to make sure it's affordable for those that truly do need aftercare for their
for example,
students.
and Brian, you might know the exact month, but I think that the Memorial location didn't open until around March. And so by that time, families have solved the problem for 6 months, and so may not want to shift at that time once they've gotten kids into a routine.
Thank you.
Councilor Gardner, earlier on, you talked about pathways, and I think that we've got a bunch of stars that are aligning really nicely with workforce development. The Alphabet Committee got funding from Ron Noble to have someone kind of meet the kids at the graduation stage and get them into the workforce. At the same time, there's several other organizations in the community that are really focused on developing the workforce. And so I think that I've been thought of the ship of the school really working on fundamentals for a long, long time. And we're there now. We've got these super talented graduates. At the same time, McMinnville needs employees desperately. And there's, for whatever reason, it's a lot harder to take this really talented graduate and get them into the workforce. And so I think that we're much closer than we've ever been. And I think some of the funding sources that are out there right now are going to make it a lot easier to bridge that gap. And I don't think, if the economy doesn't crash, I think that this could be the time where you finally get to the point where you've got a desperate enough workforce and really talented kids that you can make that transition better, because no one on the school board thinks that college is for everyone. And we've got all these talented kids, and for whatever reason, it's really hard to get them in the job. I'd hire 3 tomorrow. And it's a lot harder than it appears. But I think we're getting closer with the funding and the resources out there.
And one resource I want to highlight is we did add a secondary curriculum specialist that will work directly under Ms. Farua, but that person will be the constant communication with workforce development and the schools to help with that pipeline from high school to internships or apprenticeships, whatever. So there's a lot going on at the high school. So when you have one assistant principal trying to keep up that and supervised teacher and that kind of gets lost in the shuffle. So the secondary curriculum assistant will be able to focus real heavy on that, go to all the meetings and make sure the communication from these meetings we're going to with all of the different organizations are funneled into one place. So we can build that strong relationship and have the pathway developed for the students. So it's not after they graduate, but way before then, that they know where they can go and what their opportunities are.
And I would just add to that one of the most exciting places where we're putting a lot of energy is in some of our students who may have finished in alternative education. So these are often some of our most fragile learners. And if we can see them through to a family living wage by providing them with some additional training and opportunities before they leave us, that's a huge win, not just for that individual student, but for us as a community. We had some partnerships this past spring with Shemeketa to have students not only finish with their diploma, but also with their CNA license, ready to kind of hit the ground running and some other opportunities like that. So it's been really exciting.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me, on the after school programming, 2 quick ones. One, I saw Director Muir, you had started, and I didn't know if we missed a chance for you to weigh in. So I just wanted to put the foot in the door real quick if you had something, but also real quick plug while you transition up there for that. Some of those questions were, we had and read and reviewed an Oregon Ask assessment on our status of after school programming. And it was a thorough review of a lot of information that was starting us down some really dramatic changes. Then the pandemic hit, and then we made even more dramatic. So if you haven't had that chance to send that out to your board to read, there's some really good stuff in there that talks a lot about funding models and access and what other people in other jurisdictions, because often we look at what are other people doing, and the Oregon Ask assessment was a great way to get up to speed on where we were at when we were making some of those decisions at a policymaking level on the city. And if you guys can share that over, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. The one place perhaps on the Venn diagram that our circles could get mashed together even closer is actually finding the families for those slots. This was a chronic problem for KOB. Our most needy schools, our lowest income neighborhoods, we could not fill the slots, even if we gave away free slots. And I know that Campfire has said that several times this year. They have money, they have the ability to scholarship. We just can't get the families that we need to in there. So perhaps there's some more opportunities for that. I know that we work regularly with Brian and try and find out how we can find those kids in the schools. There are some that are great. We have full classes on day one, and there are some that we just can't connect with the families on. So I know that Campfire is having the same issue. And I'm probably jumping the gun a little bit, but I think all the principals were notified that the Campfire Summer Program just got a grant, so it's fully funded and free for all families in McMinnville. That is something that the city could not have done had we been running the STARS program. We would not have been able to access that or pull that off the way Campfire will. So that's good. And I think we just need to make sure we're really spreading the word, like Courtney said, really reaching those folks. The KOB Inc. money, we still have a balance there. We're still willing to contribute that. KOB Inc. gave Campfire $100,000 for scholarshiping this year, and we can't fill and find the families to use that money. So look forward to figuring that out.
We have hired a student engagement personnel, David Kano. I think you guys may know his name, but he has joined us. And that is one charge we're giving to him, is to reach out to our most needy families, go to them, meet them, reach out to them and offer support, and don't wait for them to ask for support. Because we know that is one obstacle for many families, is to ask for what they need. And we want to make sure we have somebody knocking on the door and offering that. So we'll make sure that David works very closely with Campfire. So we can, if we have unfilled slots, we need to get them filled. So that we can use him at a high level to reach out to those families as well.
I think it might also be another opportunity to partner with the YCCO. So they, organize all of the OHP for the region. And so they actually know who the families are, but due to HIPAA FERPA, we aren't able to transparently exchange names. But they have a service integration team, which would be another good place to kind of sit and get that information out. Again, this is I won't leave the seat before putting in a plug for kindergarten and pre-K enrollment. We have 160 available slots in our free pre-K programs, and we currently only have 99 students enrolled. And we know that the kids are out there. We just haven't been able to get the families engaged yet. And at kindergarten, in a typical cohort of kids, we have anywhere between 500 to 600 students in a cohort across the board. We only have about 170 of our kindergartners enrolled for the fall. And that is a theme that we're seeing after the pandemic. Families are just not as engaged in early learning as they were before. But it's a very concerning trend that we need to get in front of and work together on.
And that's not unique to McMinnville.
Correct.
We're seeing that across the country.
Correct.
And we know that that's just such an important year.
Yeah.
And to lose it, we're going to be fighting the next 12 years to get that kid caught up from that 1 year missed.
Yeah, the cheapest intervention we have is early intervention. So if we can get kids and families engaged and kind of our arms wrapped around them in pre-K, we then offer, dental screening and vision screening and food. And there's a lot of support that happens in those early intervention years that goes beyond academics. So really important.
And so families are just skipping kindergarten altogether and just starting their kids in first grade?
We're not real sure. That's the $1 million question. And, we have noticed a trend of lower enrollment since the pandemic started. People just haven't come back in the same way. Now that could mean that there's more homeschooling happening. I do monitor the private school enrollment around us. They haven't seen an increase very much, so that's not where they're going. But it could just be that families are keeping kids home and kind of unschooling or kind of not engaging in formal education. And we really hope that they will come back to us.
Is there state metrics for families that are using like out-of-state charter programs, but they live here, so they're
That's a good
homeschooled?
question. A lot of the out-of-state the data collection, because states don't use the same data warehouse. And so some of the communication between states is really challenging to get. But ODE is hearing from us that this is something that we're very concerned about. It's, again, not unique to McMinnville. It's kind of a national and, just a trend that we're seeing in lots of different places. But yeah.
And then as far as Campfire and funding mechanisms for families, has anybody utilized like DHS, ERDC funding to help with daycare costs?
Yes, Campfire uses ERDC.
Okay. Thank you.
Claudia, did you have something?
Yes, Counselor Minke would like to know if you think the issue is transportation
For
the pre-K.
It could be. So pre-K is in our free program. Again, this is funded out of our general fund and SIA dollars. And in the school district, we have a partnership with First Student who provides our buses. So we don't bus kids ourselves. We contract out for that. They are unable to transport 4-year-olds because of the requirement for a 5-point harness. And so we do not provide transportation currently for our pre-K programs. However, we do partner with Head Start. So if transportation and income and all of those pieces are aligned, then we will, work with Head Start to get those families enrolled elsewhere. But yes, although we have had free pre-K in McMinnville for a long time, and we've never seen this drastic of a dip in enrollment. So we're really attributing it more to the pandemic.
Do the private schools around us also show a dip in enrollment?
So their enrollment declined during comprehensive distance learning, especially this year as they were returning back to face-to-face instruction. They are kind of coming back to where they were before, but it's not a significant amount that it's about, I want to say 3%, less than 3% of our district.
Okay. Then you mentioned wanting to work with YCCO. Is there any work that's happening collaboratively there now or with YCAP or?
Yeah. So I sit on the Early Learning Council that's operated out of the YCCO, and we definitely come together with different educators in our region and Head Start and early intervention, and Linfield is there. It's a really diverse group of people that are focused on early learning. They're all kind of seeing this issue at the same time. And so there is some outreach that's happening, collectively. We've aligned our registration days countywide to kind of help boost the momentum around that. But at this point, we haven't been able to kind of, flip the script there yet.
And the way that those monies work, so if you've got $100,000 of, I'm jumping back to Campfire, you've got $100,000 of undistributed scholarship monies. Can you take some of those monies for advertising? Like, is there something that could be done on the immediate to say, send something out through a YCAP mailer or through something like that, or through the food bank where you're already targeting low-income households to try to really advertise that availability?
Do you mean for the KOB Inc. money?
I didn't mean for the KOB Inc. money unless I misunderstood. I understood that there is also unused Campfire money right now.
Oh, yes. And they do quite a bit of marketing and advertising, both for employees and for students. I think the school district has sent out as much information as they can to folks. And I certainly know that they have been more embedded and connected with some of those nonprofits in town than we could.
Okay, so you think Campfire is advertising with those via the systems of those nonprofits already to try to?
That's my understanding. I think I could certainly check with them and see, but they are aggressively trying to get families involved.
Okay.
I have a question about advertising through the summer fun program. I mean, you probably have a lot of preschool, kindergarten age kids, maybe low income, that do come to that. Is there a possibility of us getting the word out through that somehow about pre-K and kindergarten enrollment?
Absolutely.
I know we have signs up all over, but
yeah,
it's still always difficult to reach that population.
Yes, absolutely. And we would love to have any school district staff member come to a summer fun event and distribute information or be a connection to the community. And we would certainly be able to have flyers as part of that. And I think we do quite a bit of that, but I don't think they're at every single summer fun event, but happy to have you.
We can spread the word and
yeah,
we can get there.
I'm hosting the July 5th summer concert series, so I especially encourage you to come to that one. I don't have to have my script edits in until July 1st. So if you want to come, I can use the opportunity to also point it out to folks that are there that you have a representative.
Okay, yeah. Lori Fry is our communications director. And so I know that she has been working with Parks and Rec and kind of going to, spring soccer fields and, things like that. I think that going back to what you were asking about the scholarship, pieces. One of the things that's important to remember about our families that are experiencing deep poverty is that navigating kind of the whole structure of it is challenging at times. And so if it requires them to go to a website and enter in a credit card and enter, like even though it's going to be scholarshiped, in order to get to the next screen, they have to enter in a credit card. That can be enough of a, it's not for me kind of scenario. And so I think doing a little bit of a poverty audit, to kind of understand what some of those unforeseen obstacles might be, would help us kind of know how to navigate that a little bit differently. But we have this beautiful, so our old district office is now a family resource center. So for the first time, we have a place and we have it staffed to have, with computers where families can possibly come in and have someone sit next to them and navigate some of this. But I think that if we can partner on the communication aspect of that and kind of what opportunities are available and, the whole DHS connection and that kind of thing, so that we can make sure that our staff is real versed in, those opportunities as well, so that we're able to totally offer what we have available.
So I know you said that this experience of enrollment dropping is nationwide. It's not just here. The pre-K enrollment seems pretty dramatic comparatively. Is that also a nationwide problem, or is that something that we're seeing regionally or city or?
Yeah, so Counselor Chenoweth, I don't know the answer to that because a lot of states don't have free public preschool, certainly not universally. And I'm not sure that we've seen any national statistics on that. The best place to look for that information would be to look at national statistics on Head Start enrollment, because they kind of, are, a federal program, and you're able to kind of see that data at a larger level. In our participation on the Early Learning Council, we are seeing it across the county. So Head Start is also seeing it. And we did work with the YCCO to kind of do a deeper dive into their 3 and 4-year-olds. And we do have a bit of a decrease in fertility rates during those times. And so there are less kids, but it doesn't fully explain why we don't have that many less kids. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
Director Warmbier?
Yes. Somebody else asked about if transportation was the issue. And I think a bigger issue is that it's a half-day program. And so if we could have a partnership where daycares can pick up the kids for the other half of the day, that 2.5 hours that we have right now is just not possible for working families, who are probably the ones that need it the most. And we want to provide the services to as many kids as possible. So that's why we have the morning and afternoon. And it's really developmentally appropriate to have that short amount of time. But for the families that need care, if the older sibling is staying at campfire, then the younger sibling can't go to campfire. And so they need some other place to go. And so just for ease of logistics, you have to pay for full day childcare when you could be accessing this half day. So if there were childcare facilities or a transportation company that was able to provide that service, I think that would reduce the barrier a lot.
Any other questions on, I think we're titled this programs. Very good. Thank you both. And next we have future ballot measures. Samantha, are you going to brief us on that? Or Ms. Nilsson?
Good evening. I'm Samantha Nelson, Finance Director. So I was asked to give you kind of a brief synopsis of where we are in regards to our debt service. So these are the current debts for the district. The top 2 are our PERS bond side accounts. Those are set to retire in 2028. That does not necessarily mean a savings for the district, because we're paying those debt services, which is somewhat equivalent to what our PERS obligation would be for those folks if we had higher rates. Without those side accounts, our rates would be significantly higher than what they currently are. So when we forecast that out, it's anticipated anticipated to be a wash when we get to about 2028. And really, we will not experience a savings. We will probably actually experience an increase at that time. Our general obligation bonds, we have these 4 that are currently out there. We have the 2021A, 2021B, Series 2013, and Series 2016. The first 2 are scheduled to retire in 2028. Those are the ones that we have planned, that those are the ones we would go out and do a renewal for that time when those expire, so that the others would come on. These bonds for our district fund most of our facility improvements and just our overall ongoing maintenance, just the number of HVACs that we have on these systems. So a lot of these bonds were originally from the 2013, 2016 equipment purchases that we've now done on buildings, but they're starting to age again, because obviously 2016 to 2022, by the time we get to 2028, many of these infrastructure pieces will have met their lifetime or becoming close to their lifetime. And so in order to fund those, we will need the bond to facilitate that. As part of that process, we will do a long range facility planning, just as we did with the last very large bond, which involved community and the board and everybody that is involved in that and has an interest. And so that's kind of where we are at currently. Our longest bond is due to retire in 2038, which is our largest outstanding bond at this time.
And so our next logical bond effort would be to 2028.
Correct.
And I think the thinking about this discussion is the city has the same chart, and we want to avoid going to the voters at the same time. I know that on the 2 bond campaigns ago, we were surprised there was something on the schedule ballot for the city fire department. And, when the community's deciding between firefighters and schools, it's a tough competition. So if there's a way that we can strategically avoid those sort of doubling up at an election, it's, I think, to all of our advantage. And so ideally, we could get the city's version of this and sort of blend them together and say, hey, at 2028, we're both looking for the same thing. Let's stagger it and get ahead of it. Any questions for Samantha?
The 2028 bond, it sounds like it's going to be just more of a refresh of infrastructure. Nothing, you're not looking at another $90 million bond.
Right. Typically, our long range planning group, we have a facility subgroup of this district. Anytime we go out for a bond, we would do a complete reevaluation of all of our systems and all our facilities, and the needs of that bond would be identified through that process. But I can absolutely, part of our infrastructure would be a big part of that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And also you've got to remember, if we want, bond is dropping in 28, that we really will start this process in like 25, because it takes a year of long range facilities looking at, and then it takes another year to decide, and then it takes a year to, go out for the bond. So it is like it really starts in 25 for the 28 bond.
And in your guys' experience, you like them to fall off and come online at the same time, so there's no dip in.
Correct.
Yeah.
That works a lot better than the alternative.
If you're knocking on doors and you can tell the taxpayer that this means no change to your taxes, that's a lot easier sell. And I think that when you think about how many facilities we have and how heavily they're used, it's going out every 10 years almost doesn't feel like enough, because the amount of use that our facilities gets, just replacing courts, basketball courts or football fields, they get so much attention. And so if you don't have a really good schedule and you're not managing that on a regular basis, you can find yourself backwards, and then it's really hard to dig out of it. Anything else for Mrs. Nilsson? Very good, thank you. Charisse, could you bring up the Venn diagram? I think that we've covered everything that we formally had on the agenda. I just wanted to touch on a couple of these that didn't quite make the cut tonight. I think the first one is sort of blending what MacTown 2032 did and our long range sort of focus, and how there might be ways that those can blend together. And then if you can scroll down a little bit, we've sort of looked at the city properties. There we go.
I don't know why it's not scrolling.
There we go. I think one of them that we've talked about a little bit, but affordable housing, workforce development, and a talented workforce, or our students. One of the things that we are encountering is when we hire these super talented teachers that are really eager to be working at the best district in the state, they can't find a place to live. And that is just really, really troubling. And then because I know the same holds true for the city. And this is one where it's affecting, we as a school district have almost no ability to sort of manipulate that. And I think the city has more of an ability to manipulate that. So some of these things, we have more control over the outcome. And some of these, the city has more control. And I think this is one where I'd like to, if we're able to get together again, have a little bit more time to talk about this, because I think it really affects all of us. And how do we get to the point where when we do hire those talented teachers, they can afford to buy a house here in McMinnville?
You know, Carson, I would say, I mean, affordable housing is one of the reasons we're losing students. I mean, families cannot afford to move to McMinnville. And, you know, I think that's an issue for our enrollment as well. It's not just our employees, but our enrollment.
This is a regional issue. The housing prices in McMinnville are fairly constant with housing prices in other parts of the region from what I've seen. And it's a function of people moving into the state with land laws that we have that do not facilitate growth. And so I don't think that the city or the school district are going to be able to, in a, say, a 10-year timeframe even, address housing affordability. I think housing affordability is going to get worse in our community before it gets better. We've taken steps as a city to do the planning that's needed to bring in new housing inventory, but we're years away from that happening. And, you know, the thing that I was noticing is the large number of residential properties that the school district owns. And, you know, I'm aware of some employers who are looking into buying housing for their own employees, and that might be a consideration for, I mean, it seems out of the box, but that might be something that the school district may have to consider, making that part of the benefits package.
And it's not unique to Oregon either. I mean, we can blame the land laws, but you know, whether it's in Denver or Salt Lake City, it's housing shortages really does exist across the country. And we could be headed into a colossal recession, and that won't, maybe that'll level it out. But I think it's something that our Venn diagram is firmly on top of the cities on this. The exact same concerns we have, you share, I'm sure.
I think we not only share them, but I think that we've been doing a lot of action steps over a long period of time. So we've done a lot of code changes to encourage affordable housing. We also continue to look at things to limit how and where, excuse me, our housing can be built. And we've done that both successfully and unsuccessfully over the last number of years. I'll leave it at that because I can feel my voice is.
I often cry at these meetings, so that's okay. Well, I think one of those, the vacation rentals just drives me crazy when we hire a teacher and we can't find a place to live, and there's, you know, 75 vacation rentals where people are only half living in these homes. And I know that that's a complex topic, but I think that we could spend more time on this, because I think that despite the fact that it's a regional issue, there's probably things we can do to help push it in the right direction.
And just a response, I'm sorry, to Councilman Peralta, I will tell you, there are school districts that have bought they're not boxables, but those types of homes, and have placed them on some of their open lots and do offer housing for teachers through that. So that is happening within the state. So when we come back to the table, looking at some of those options, maybe where we're at as a district is we continue to have problems. Not just, we keep saying teachers, but it actually affects our classified staff at even a higher rate, and we actually hire more of them. So I think and so when we speak of it, it really is all staff, but really looking at our classified staff that are at that barely living wage right now.
So Debbie, so Brian, does those property that we own, that residential properties, do we have some preference to the teachers? So the teachers, when they come over here, or we offer to anybody?
It has not been in the past. Those have been long-term leases. People have been in for long before we started having these big issues of housing. So the people that live in those have been there for years and years.
I'm really interested in continuing conversation about the parcel of land, including Yamhill County Soil, Water and Conservation District, and the parcel of land that's inside the city and adjacent to so many of your properties. I think that would be a great conversation for us to have all together.
Any other comments for the good of the order?
I just wanted to say thank you for getting together. I know it's been a long road with Zach and myself have reached out over the years, and I'm sure other counselors have as well. So I just really appreciated the meeting and look forward to having more. So thank you.
I had just a comment on the enrollments. When the pandemic started, I did a lot of research on epidemic countries, Ebola and other countries that had come out of significant issues like that. And it seems to me that one of the main things that I kept seeing in all the research was the impact on the poorer households being most significant in terms of loss of education. And as we were talking tonight, or just over time, I went and took another look at the data. And 28% of households in Yamhill County are single parent households. And between 30 and 40%, depending on the state, of all the children living in poverty are in single parent households. And 2/3 of the low income jobs that were lost during the pandemic were jobs that were held by single parents, single wage earner folks. And so I'm willing to bet that a lot of the pre-K enrollment loss, being as how it's a half day, is probably really centered in single parent families. And I don't have a solution for that, but it's just based on my read of the data. That would be where I would be looking to try and help place interventions.
Thank you. And before I close, I was going to see if Zach would talk about maybe ways that we can build on this first meeting and kind of co-attend different events.
Yeah, I mean, I think this went great. Maybe to the mayor and Chair Brenner and the staff, director or Ms. Brockett and Mr. Towery to co-sign on some sort of more regimented meeting schedule, but I'd certainly be willing to sign up for whether it's a monthly or quarterly, more regular group to meet and talk about this stuff, and then some way to be every 6 months or at least yearly to get this group together. I think it's nothing but good stuff can come of it, and whether it's taking advantage of your light schedule here before you guys get your own summer break. Can we get a summer break sometime? But or every 6 months or and then split off for other sort of groups. Yeah, I don't know if there's an answer yet or we can come up with one, but I'd certainly be willing to sign up to do the work on a rigorous scale. So
thank you. And I concur. I think that we've got to get it programmed, because if we wait for us to think of it, it takes 1.5 years to get a meeting put together. So unless there's Superintendent Brockett, did you want to close with anything? Or
I would like to just thank the council. I know that they have brought me into many meetings and we started our monthly meetings, gosh, way back, barely knew where I even lived at that point. I think I still used navigation when the council reached out to me and started having these conversations. So I thank you guys for that because it really opened my eyes. I've met with some of you individually and had great conversations. So if we can find ways to include you, to bring you in, I know that definitely find space on my calendar. I know many of my directors or all my directors would as well. So any way we can get to just continue these conversations, we welcome them and we hope they can continue.
Mr. Towery?
Thank you, Chair Benner. I appreciate the time and energy that both the elected officials and key staff put into this. I think it was a great opportunity. And I think before too much longer, Debbie and I will try to get together and start to plan a sort of a more rigorous approach to scheduling these meetings out and hopefully welcome you back soon after the school year, or at least before the holidays, with another opportunity to meet.
Thank you. Do you want to call the meeting to a close, Mayor?
Yeah, the meeting is closed.
Woo!
Thank you. Yeah, BYOG. No, now I've used multiple gavels in the city.